I did want to ask you a little bit about the stimulus debate and all the spending that's going on because the House, as you know, passed the HEROES Act, and that's 3 trillion. We don't have a deal yet coming out of the White House and the Senate, but I wanted to ask you about the national debt because it just keeps rising. We're almost at 27 trillion. The deficit is World War II levels, surpassed World War II levels. How high do you think the deficit and the debt are going to get? I mean, as we go forward with this deficit spending during the pandemic.
I have to tell you, Nicholas, I have been a spending hawk and a fiscal hawk, and this troubles me greatly. But all I see is more spending. So how high do we get? We are going to continue to spend until the markets say enough is enough and nobody buys the bonds. And then we have the cliff that we go off of. So I hope long before then we act responsibly and dial this back. But the reality is that we are at 30 trillion because we've authorized the Fed to engage in debt, accumulating more debt. And so I think that the spending is one of the largest issues to come out of this COVID. And unfortunately, there's no conversation in Washington, D.C. about how to pay this money back.
Do you think with the deficit and the debt, we could reach some sort of fiscal cliff in the next 5 years? What would be your estimate? Congressman Massey was saying $40 trillion debt by the time the pandemic is over. What would be your estimate in terms of where we're heading and what the dangers are?
Well, it's a great question. I don't know at what point we go off the cliff, but clearly we were accumulating debt in times of peace and in times of economic prosperity. Exactly the time when we shouldn't be accumulating debt, exactly the time when we should be retiring debt. And so with this pandemic, I think we're going to see several $1 trillion more spent on the pandemic before we start coming out of it. So I think we will be over $30 trillion. Thomas is a lot smarter than I am. If he says 40 trillion, I take his word for it. But the reality is nobody really knows at what point enough is enough, and when do we are we no longer able to borrow money.